Car washes might not be the highest and best use for a car wash. I know that's kind of a weird statement to make, but that's why I sat down with the president of the International Car Wash Association, Marcus Cottrell, who's a good friend of mine and a student in my CRE Accelerator program, to talk to him about what we did with an old abandoned car wash here in Nashville. It didn't make financial sense for us to update it and convert it back into a car wash, so we did the exact opposite. I turned it into 5 micro restaurants and a bar. So here's my conversation sitting down with him, talking about how I found the deal, how I made the numbers work, and why we decided to do what we did.
Okay, Tyler, you got to interview me for the Craw Wash side, so now I'm going to interview you for your restaurant side.
Turning the tables.
Tell me a little bit about your background and what drew you to the Craw Wash as a means to accomplish your goals.
Yeah, so I got started in commercial real estate back in 2013, which was a very different market than what we've had for the past 5-10 years, really. Because back then we were still coming out of the great financial crisis. People weren't moving very fast. And I was a leasing agent trying to fill some, Class A shopping center space, Class B office space, because I was working for a boutique developer. And they owned a little bit of everything. And so office, retail, industrial, townhomes, multifamily, we did a little bit of everything. So when I left and started my firm in 2018, the Cobble Group, I decided I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into any one industry because I found it all very interesting. But I knew at the same time I would still have to niche down in some respect. So that's how I wound up in East Nashville, which is where the wash is. To me, it was, let's go by geographic location. We'll pick a really cool neighborhood. I'm going to spend all of my time there. I'm going to become the guy there. And that's what happened. I just talked about East Nashville all the time. And it was a pretty phenomenal thing for my business because people started saying like, oh, Tyler's the East Nashville guy, send him all the East Nashville deals. And I got to know all of the property owners really well, and I knew the neighborhood unbelievably well and still do. So we found the wash back in 2020. Actually, I was working on it from a property management side before we really dove in to looking at it from an investment perspective, because before the pandemic hit, I was managing Airbnbs. We had about a dozen short-term rentals that we were managing for other investor clients. We were talking to the owner at the time because he wanted to convert the 6-bay car wash into 6 short-term rentals. He's going to do little studio apartments in each one.
Wow.
We were going to come in and help him manage those, and it was going to be a really interesting project. The reason that he was having to do that, which is the reason we ended up coming up with the wash, was because there was some sort of legislation with Metro Nashville that if the building was torn down, the city was going to condemn automatically 20 feet of right-of-way. Well, you've seen the site. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a 1/10 of an acre. It is tiny. So 20 feet was almost 1/3 of the property. So you basically lose all usability for the site. Whereas if you worked within the existing structure, we could actually create something. And so it was actually this creative project came about because of the hardship that was kind of inflicted upon us by the circumstances before we even came into it. So of course, when the pandemic hit, he decided, hey, I am not moving forward on a short-term rental right now. I'm out. We were kind of bummed because we thought it was a really cool project. We really wanted to work on it. And I was driving past one day and I had just gotten off a phone call that I had been having non-stop when the pandemic hit, which was restaurant groups calling me saying, hey, we want to rent a space that is focused solely on to-go and delivery. We don't want any, indoor dining space. We don't need it because of course everything was shut down. There was no way that you could actually do that. And I kept having to tell them, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't exist in Nashville. That's not really a thing here.
Now, were these chain places that were calling you, like chain, or were these local?
They were all mom and pops. All mom and pops. And so I was driving past the car wash one day, and I had literally just gotten off one of those phone calls, and I looked over at it, and I thought, what if we converted each of those little bays into kind of a walk-up restaurant? At the time, ghost kitchens were a big deal. Right, everybody was talking about that because ghost kitchens were essentially that. They were to go and delivery only. They didn't have a retail facade. So because of that, they had more affordable rent and they were able to keep open and operating during the pandemic. I called my architect and I said, hey, hang up on me if you think this is crazy.
Did he hang up?
He didn't hang up. He said, I love that idea. I've actually thought about doing something similar to that before. We can do it. That's kind of where it came from. It was my COVID baby based on 1, a hardship from the city, and 2, just the demand that I saw in the market from restaurant groups.
I find that so fascinating because I'm in the car wash business and I have several friends in the car wash business, and there are a lot of these little self-serve car washes all over the country that can be used or reutilized in some different areas. And so that's why I think this is so fascinating. So when did you have the aha moment? Okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. How did that come about?
So it was as soon as I got off that phone call with my architect and he told me it was a possibility, because I didn't want to even start exploring it if he was like, well, it's going to be too cost prohibitive or whatever to work within the confines of those existing walls. We represented a lot of restaurants at my commercial real estate brokerage doing, purchases and leases for them. So I just started calling restaurant groups and saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing a concept like this. If I did, what are your thoughts? And, we kind of talked high level pricing and, structure and things like that. Had a few people that said, absolutely not. It's way too expensive. Because we're talking, in the $100+ per square foot range for rent.
I was going to ask you, how would you even come about figuring how to charge?
So it was very tough. There wasn't a precedent for it out there, not like this at least. But I was able to kind of back into, okay, our clients that have done restaurants, here's how much it costs on a price per square foot basis. On our typical, value add build outs that are, at this level of construction, here's how much we would have to spend. And we got pretty close. So we were able to kind of dial in what those rents would need to be. We were off. It ended up being a little bit more expensive for us to actually build it out.
Was it higher or lower?
Yeah. It was higher, but fortunately we still broke even the first year because I baked it enough. Like, I don't know how this is going to go contingency. So fortunately year one we broke even. But it was tough because we didn't have precedents to look at, and you never know what you're going to find. You'll probably appreciate this. It was a 6-bay self-serve car wash. Had been there for 30, 40 years. Well, at some point, one of the new owners came in and said, I'm not going to deal with all the existing plumbing here. I'm not going to tear it out. I'm just going to put down all new plumbing and I'm going to pour concrete on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the problem is when you're renovating a site, we've got to go all the way down and cut all of that out in order for us to run our water lines and sewer, because that's what is to code. So we had to cut through 2 layers of piping and concrete in order for us to...
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the Craw Wash business.
Yeah, there's always something you never expect, right?
All right. Besides that challenge, what were some of the other challenges, like maybe with the city? Were there any zoning issues? Were there any, things that maybe you didn't expect?
We didn't have any zoning issues. So the nice thing about Nashville zoning in some areas is that it's mixed use. So we could easily go from a car wash to a restaurant. No problem. Of course, we would have to, if we're going to have a change of use, we have to bring everything up to code, which of course didn't really matter because we were basically starting from a wall or a few walls in our spaces. Little things that were interesting. It was a tiny site, but it was so small that we couldn't get a big jackhammer machine in there to tear out all the concrete. So we had to have a guy on there on site for 3 or 4 days straight doing nothing but jackhammering concrete. I don't know about you, but whenever I've weed eated, you can feel the vibrations in your hand for an hour after you're done. That guy had to have been like a cartoon, just jumping up and down for the next couple of weeks. The other thing is too, somebody at some point hadn't done the water runoff properly on the site.
They had not done it right.
They didn't do it right, which meant that the water was going away from the surface, but it was going into the soil underground, which is fine if there's no chemicals in it or anything like that, right? Which we didn't have any environmental concerns to worry about with this site. The problem is we're elevated from the street, which means we've got retaining walls on the alley and on the street. Well, the hydrostatic pressure had built up so much. And of course, it only ever happens after you buy it, right? Everything's totally fine until you close on the property. The hydrostatic pressure had built up so much behind those walls. All of a sudden, we come back one day and it's 6 or 8 inches away from the actual, concrete walkway. Yeah. And we're looking at it going, oh, that's not good.
That's a problem.
That's a easy $80,000 bill that we weren't expecting, but we figured it out, and it is what it is. But you always try to bake in, especially on a deal like this where there's just so many unknowns. It's not like we're going in and building flex space, right? Because that's very programmatic. We're going to build 10,000 square feet. It's going to look like this, and it's this footprint, and this is the kind of soil that we need. There was no set of blueprints for how to do this. So fortunately, we baked it enough to get us by.
Tell me how you decided to pick your restaurants. So what was the mindset with that? Because when I went there, I didn't see any fast food chains, no national chains. I didn't see any of that. So how did you decide how you wanted, what tenants you wanted in there?
That's a great question. So a couple of things. Right off the bat, when you are building your own food hall, you get to selfishly pick all of the concepts that you want to eat at every day, right? My office is
Perfect.
literally next door. And I mean, I ate there today for lunch. I ate at Suiza, the quesadilla spot. You pick, whatever you enjoy. And I would consider myself a bit of a foodie. That's why one of the reasons I live in East Nashville is, you've got some of the best restaurants and bars in town. And so that was the first criteria. The second criteria, this was actually when we first started. We thought, hey, this is a really unique concept for big Nashville brands that don't have a presence in East Nashville to have like a little satellite location. So we thought about going after like brands like Hattie B's, right? Everybody recognizes them. But the more that we discussed it internally, the more we were like, you know what? Hattie B's is doing well enough. They can afford to go open up their own spot. But I'm a big proponent of the fact that we will never have some of the best restaurants that we could, because opening up a restaurant is so cost prohibitive.
And it's tough.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And if you're a really good chef, you're not going to have the time to go out and learn how to deal with real estate, raise capital from investors, put together business pitches. You want to focus on running a kitchen.
Yeah, you
right?
want to get your menu right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We decided, you know what? Let's go for people that don't have any current locations, no brick and mortar. They have to be doing either a pop-up or a food truck. That's all that we're going to consider. And when we did that, we had all 6 leases signed within 2 weeks of announcing the project. Not even breaking ground, announcing it. And the restaurants, every single restaurant is either woman-owned or minority-owned, which again was not intentional. But what we realized looking back on it was, as soon as people were given the chance, they were able to take advantage of it.
So you've had this a few years now. What year did you open?
Oh gosh, 2022.
Okay. Do you still have the same tenants in there?
We do not. So 4 out of the 6 concepts are the same. The first year, since I didn't know how things were going to go, we didn't set it up on a triple net lease, which is what I prefer to do. It's a specific lease structure in which, in commercial real estate, owner gets to pass on the costs of common area maintenance, property taxes, and building insurance.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal, right? Yeah. Especially in Nashville, when you have like a 30% increase in property taxes. That'd be a 30% decrease in my margins.
Yeah.
Right. I couldn't set it up that way because it was going to be too cost prohibitive to go in and make each individual bay fully, on its own with utilities and everything. And so we kind of did it on a full service gross lease structure, which meant I'm going to pay for everything, but we're going to charge you for it. I didn't know the first year how much those expenses would be.
I bet.
We had an idea of what water might cost, but we didn't know, or an idea of what gas might cost. Fortunately, that first year we broke even, but after that we were able to raise rents to where they really needed to be. And of course, we get all of the restaurants to report sales as well. So I'm very conscious about keeping it affordable for them.
Yeah.
That's the entire point behind this deal. I'm not going to retire off this little deal.
Right.
It was a $2.2 million real estate investment at the end of the day. The whole point was, can we make affordable space for business owners, for restaurateurs, which nobody's talking about? And I think we proved that thesis.
Being the Craw Wash guy, I love the theme, the Craw Wash, and you kept the name. So tell me a little bit about that thought process. I don't know if everybody would have kept it called, The Wash. To me, that's very unique. So kind of give me a little background on that.
Yeah, we really leaned into it, called it The Wash, because I like to pay homage to what properties used to be. There's a lot of real estate developers that like to completely whitewash and get rid of it. Yeah, and to me, I think that there's something really cool about people walking on site and saying, "Oh, this is really interesting. I washed my car in this bay." Which I've
there's a lot of people that say that.
There's a lot of people. Oh yeah, there's a ton. Right? Because we're right in the neighborhood. We're on a major thoroughfare.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that are in that neighborhood are like, this is crazy. I used to wash my car in this bay and now I'm getting Peruvian food, which is really neat. So, and it's cool. I mean, if you look at the space, you can tell, we even call them bays, right? So you got bay 1,
that's
2,
very
3,
cool.
4, 5,
I know.
6.
That's close to my heart, man. I love that. Yeah.
And we leaned into it with the bar, which I own. So the bar is called Bay 6. And we really went with this kind of moto theme at first, which, now it's kind of izakaya moto. But we leaned in with, motorcycles and cars. And so that was kind of the theme of the bar.
What's been the most gratifying part of this project to you personally?
Really just putting together a concept that's affordable for small business owners, that also makes us a profit, right? I'm not going to sit here and say like, hey, I'm here to only do good in the world. We're also trying to make money as well.
Right.
We take a lot of risk as real estate investors and developers. But the fact that we were able to do all of that and still provide something that's affordable. The average restaurant got open in here for $30,000. Most restaurants, if they were going to go build out their own space in a 1,500 to 2,000 square foot space, it would cost you almost $500,000, $300,000 to $500,000 right off the bat. But because we were able to provide the hood vent, the grease trap, the 3-compartment sink, and the walk-in coolers, we took away the startup costs and we just baked that back into our rent. So it helps with our valuation, but it also makes it a lot more affordable for these startups to get going.
All right. Since I'm the Craw Wash guy here, and I think it's a cool, very cool concept. So let's break down the numbers a second. So tell me about, when we price replacing equipment in Craw Washes, we kind of price it out per bay. It could be $15,000 per bay or $25,000 per bay. How did you cover the cost of everything, and how, let's break down the numbers a little bit, because there's a lot of Craw Washes out there that maybe could do this. And so, the first thing they're going to ask or figure out is, okay, what's it cost to do it?
Sure. First piece of advice I always give is just tear the building down. If you don't start over. If you don't have to work within the existing walls, tear them down. You can build the exact same thing back, because the hardship made us realize, like, yes, 380 square feet works. You can build it back the exact same. It's just so much easier to have new construction. Yes, we paid for everything. So when you talk about what it looks like, the way that we set it up, the restaurant groups, all they had to do is brand their own bay, like put their branding, their decals on the outside, and bring their specific restaurant equipment. So we didn't provide like fryers or ovens or anything like that, because we didn't know. Right, we could put a dessert bar in, or we could put in a fried chicken joint. Those are going to have two very different equipment requirements. But we knew that just about everybody's going to need a hood vent.
Yep.
Just about everybody will need the 3-compartment sink, the walk-in coolers, the grease trap. So we said we'll cover all of that. But the way that we structured the leases is that the tenants are responsible for maintenance of that quarterly. So they have to maintain it. They have to provide those reports to us, because if I'm going to pay for the equipment, I better be getting some reports on how well you're maintaining it, because that stuff's expensive. It's over $1,000 a foot for a hood vent, right? So if you got a 20-foot hood vent, it's $20,000.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to car washes in that respect, that we're buying the real estate, we're renting it to somebody else to operate. We don't have to operate it, but we are providing the equipment, so we get the depreciation and write-off.
So you would get the depreciation then for the equipment, not the tenant, correct?
That's right. So they're not paying for it, so of course they don't get it. We're paying for it. We get the depreciation, which it's 6 in one hand, half a dozen the other. It depends on if you're financially capable of doing it, why not? The way I look at it is, if we spend $20,000 on a hood vent, can I divide that $20,000 over the term of the lease, amortize it at 8% interest, and bake that back into the rent to make the property worth more? And we could. We were able to justify that. So all in all, we ended up spending a little over $800 a foot on the entire project, right? So buying the land, redoing the building and the patio, and then putting all the restaurant equipment in.
So if a guy that owns a self-serve Craw Wash, say a 6-bay Craw Wash, he could say, okay, and prices are higher now, obviously, but $850 per square foot, you think, or $900 maybe?
I think so. I think, let's look at that from the high end. I would hope, right? Like, we wanted to make sure we really did things right. I think if you're building it from ground up, you're probably going to be able to do it cheaper.
Yeah.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of fixed expenses that are going to be the same whether you're building 2,400 square feet like what we had, or 24,000 feet, right? So the grease trap's largely going to be the same. We've got, the hood vents, they're kind of going to be the same. Your walk-in coolers, well, they don't make mini walk-in coolers for, a mini restaurant, right? And nor would you necessarily want one, because these restaurants are doing a fair amount of volume. They're doing $500,000 a year out of a 380 square foot
incredible.
Space. Yeah.
Wow.
So, if you run the math on that, you annualize it out over the average size restaurant in Nashville. These are $2 million a year restaurants.
Okay, I know when I visited, you had this nice food court, which I thought was really neat, and you had a cover over it. So tell me who manages that part. So if they're behind the grill, who manages cleaning up the food court? Just a simple operational question.
Yeah, great question. So my office is next door, so it's very easy for my team to swing by and pay attention to it. But we have our management team, my property management team manages it. So my maintenance team will go over there once or twice a day, just depending on what it looks like. And then we also have a cleaning crew that will come through once or twice a day. The tenants are also responsible for maintaining things in front of their bay, right? So, we of course they're paying for the cleaning, but we also say, look, if there's trash on the ground in front of your bay, just go pick it up.
Let's go back a little bit. You said you have 4 of the original tenants still in there. How did you go by to replace the other 2? Did they call you, or did you put an ad out, or how did that work?
So I've got a wait list of over 30 restaurants.
A waiting list.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I didn't really have to work on it too hard.
So you just pick up the phone?
As soon as we decided that we weren't going to renew those other 2, we already basically had leases signed. And the reason I didn't renew those other 2 has to do with operating hours. So if anybody does decide to do this, you want to be very conscientious of the operating hours that you're going to have for all of your tenants.
Oh, great comment. Yeah.
So if you're opening a food hall, you can't have half the people open whenever the hell they want and the other half open whenever the hell they want. Right. Because you gotta create this atmosphere of, when I go there, every restaurant's open. We get to pick whatever we want. Mom and dad get to go eat at this bay and the kids get to eat at this bay. And that's what creates a really nice environment. Well, we had 2 tenants that they preferred not to operate by the operating hours of the building. I chose not to renew them because of that.
Was that in the operating agreement prior?
It was. So it was in the lease. Yeah. It was very, I think our operating hours for the shopping center that year were, 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. until 8 p.m. So nothing crazy, but the wash is packed on the weekends. I mean, Saturdays are...
That sounds like a regular Craw Wash.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. People want to get out of the house and they want to go and enjoy it. Saturdays are crazy. Well, one of the groups would just run out of food at lunch and they would just close down for the rest of the day.
That'd be like the Craw Wash. Hey, we don't have any more water.
Yeah.
We're going to just shut
down. We're out
of
water today. Yeah. Sorry, closed. Yeah. Can you imagine? What a terrible way to run a business. That's great. That's really cool in the first month of opening a restaurant. It's really bad 11 months in to be still selling out of food.
The same problem. That's not a good sign.
Buy more food.
Yeah. Like I said, when I was there before, you had this nice, sitting area with a nice old canopy. So what have you done lately to maybe enhance the property for your tenants?
So when we first started off, we decided, let's go ahead and build the steel poles that we might need to extend a hard roof in case we ever want to. Then we wouldn't have to disturb too much of the ground. But we built a hard roof over about a fifth of the seating area. All right, we've got 80 seats outside. And then we decided to do a canvas, tent over the other 2 areas. And what we found was that, the canvas helps with the sun, but it gets awfully hot in Nashville.
Yeah.
And it gets awfully cold. So during the winter, nobody had anywhere to go. You could sit inside, but there's only 12 seats at the bar inside. Everything else is outdoor seating. So what we decided to do was triple the size of the hard roof, and I had some custom fabricated walls that are modular that we can take up and put down whenever it gets cold to block the wind on the sides. And then we're installing heaters and fans this week as well.
Great customer experience.
We'll be able to keep the wind moving, keep you cooler in the summers, keep you warmer in the winters. That way we can make it an all year round really experience. And we haven't even gotten the fans up. We haven't even gotten the heaters out, which obviously we don't need heaters right now. We just extended the hard roof and we've already seen a 17 to 20% increase in sales at some of the restaurants.
I was going to ask you now, do you know if most of the customers, do they get their food and go home, or do they get their food and spend time in the plaza?
Okay, so the funny thing was, when we were first doing this, the whole thing was to go and delivery, right? So we thought the majority of it's going to be to go and delivery, and it's turned out to be the opposite. It's nice to have the to go and delivery. For the restaurants, it's typically 20 to 30% of their sales. So it's not a small number by any means.
No, it's impactful.
But that means 70 to 80% of sales are eating on site. So it's really cool to see. And the funny thing is, we don't have any parking. We've got 3.
That was my next question. Yeah. Most of your car wash sites, especially self-serve, are a little tight. So how do you deal with the parking?
We didn't have any parking. We've got 3 spaces that are 10 minutes max for to go and delivery, and then we've got 1 handicap space. We do have on-street parking. And then fortunately, after we went under contract on the site, I was trying to negotiate to buy some parking from somebody else or rent some parking. Fortunately, after we went under contract, Nashville passed a new ordinance permitting 0 parking requirements on this street. So we actually didn't have to have any. But what we found is people bike. They walk, they park down the street, they find a way to get there.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler, I appreciate you coming to our ICA show here. So tell me what you think and what brought you here.
I mean, look, this is wild. I live in Nashville. This is our convention center. I've been to a bunch of conventions here. I've never seen anything where the vendors put so much time and effort into their booths. I mean, these are full, like somebody had to bring in a construction team to set this up. It's amazing. I mean, when I walked in, I was not expecting it to be the size it is, but I think you said there's going to be over 9,000
Over 9,000 here, yeah.
And I can tell.
Yeah, no, it's impressive. And so, we're honored to have you here. I appreciate you being here, especially since you're a local guy, and love the transformation you did with the wash, which I think is very cool. And I appreciate you being here at the association show. So
yeah,
glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, we're interested in expanding into the car wash industry. So
you've come to the right place.
To learn here.
Yeah, come to the right place.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
So there you have it for why we decided to do the wash. If you want to learn more about car washes in general, check out this interview here.